Hey guys, I'm here with my very good friend Cindy Cowan. She is an Emmy award winning and Oscar nominated film producer. Cindy, how's it going?
Great, and it's good to see you, even on the small screen.
I know it's great to see you too. It's
Right.
nice that we actually get to see each other in person way more often than I
Right?
see a lot of other people.
Absolutely.
Okay, how has this pandemic affected your work? Because I mean, the movie industry, I think about it all the time. It's it's crazy.
Um, my personal business came to a standstill for over a year. I had a movie going with Sony, and we tried to outrun the pandemic, which was really tricky. We started the film in London. It was right when the start of the pandemic. London was closing its borders, so we quickly left the UK and we're prepping in South Africa, and then the variant happened. And then we were pulling out of South Africa and we were going to Thailand. And Thailand had this thing where you had to quarantine 2 weeks when you got there. And most of my actors were from the UK. So they would have had to quarantine 2 weeks back, which was not feasible for my budget to hold actors for a month when they weren't even working. And so everything pulled back. And now we are gearing up, and most of my movies are gearing up at the same exact time, which is a little bit scary. But the first movie will go in January, which was the same movie that we talked about in 3 different countries. And now we're in Serbia. So there we are. So I'm trying to outrun a pandemic, which is really interesting.
How many movies are you working on simultaneously right now?
We've got 5 that are going. Yeah. And I just, it's going to be a challenging year next year, but it'll be fun. I mean, I didn't work at all this last year. So here we go.
Are you physically on set with every film that you work on?
Yes. And so it's going to be challenging. Ones that I'm the only producer on most of them, but ones that I have somebody producing with me, we'll just have to work it out where we come and go.
What does that mean? So you're the only producer on most of them. What do you as a producer do? A lot of people don't really understand what film production entails. Can you explain what your job is?
So I am an actual producer. There are various credits that are given to various people. I do everything from I find the script or the story or the news article or any kind of piece of IP. I then work with writers to shape the story into something that I feel that I can set up. I'm lucky enough to work with a lot of the studios and streamers. So in the case of the next movie that I just said, I was outrunning countries. That's Sony. So I walked an article into Sony. They graciously paid for the project to become a screenplay. And so I worked with 2 different writers to get it to where it's a shooting script. And then I bring on the director, I cast the movies, and then I go to the location where the movie's filming. And I sit there to make sure that we meet our days. And that is usually when you budget a film, you get a certain budget and it's broken down into days and you try to make your days. And it's up to a good producer to make sure that you don't go over what those days are and that you get the proper footage to make sure that the scenes come out the way that you want them to. And then once the movie wraps, I'll go into an editing room and I sit there with an editor and the director, and we make sure that the film is edited properly. And then it's not even done. And then I have to make sure that it's deliverable. And that's kind of different. If you're with a studio, the delivery process is a bit easier because you deliver to a studio. If you're an independent producer, you might have to deliver to different countries, which a lot of people don't realize. So Japan can have different kinds of requirements than China, which can have different requirements than Australia, and different requirements from America. And you also have to properly translate those movies into proper languages or make sure they're subtitled accordingly. So there's a lot that a producer does, but that's me who's an actual producer. There are people that are executive producers, and those are the money people. So if you see like 4 executive producer credits, chances are they've bought in money somehow. If you see a co-producer credit, that might mean that you worked on it in some way, you were involved in some way, maybe you helped get an actor attached, maybe you work for me at my company and I'm trying to help you get a credit, so you're starting to build producer credits. It could be that you, in one way or another, you're associated with the film. and bringing it to life. And then the associate producer credits are people that also do work, but they're usually titles that are given. Again, I could have someone that's a superstar at my company. Maybe they found me the article that's then going to become a movie, and I'll fight. I do, a lot of people don't, but I'll fight with the studios to make sure that that person gets the credit. And usually they start as an associate producer. So that's what producers do.
Which is probably why you have so many friends in the industry, because I think that someone, you always have your friends' backs. You don't let anyone get screwed over, which happens so often.
So often, I know. And I don't understand it. I don't understand why some people and agents and producers and whatever are so, they'll do anything to screw somebody over to not get credits. It's a credit. Give it to them. They earned it. We all have to start somewhere. So,
yeah,
a lot of really good people out there that deserve to get credits. They're not getting.
it's so great that you say that, because it left such a huge impression on me. I was a young kid. It was the first TV show that I was working on. And I had created a TV show with one of my friends that I also happened to be managing at the time. And, we got a production company that was creating the show with us. Like, we went through all of the little steps that were so new to me, because I was just a 23-year-old kid with an idea, and we wrote out the script. So then when we partnered with, I'm not going to say which production company, when we partnered with them and we finally shot the pilot, and it was a really great pilot, and I was very excited about it. We went to a private screening of the pilot, and I see the credits, and I'm like, my name's not there. But I actually started the project and my name wasn't there. And we were actually working with Eddie Griffin on the pilot and on the show, and Eddie was a part of the project from the very beginning. And it was so nice. Like, at the end of it, when everyone's just kind of paying attention to the content and how great the episode turned out, he stood up and he was like, "Where's this young lady's credit?" And I was so touched by what he did. Yeah, if he didn't do that, I never would have gotten my credit. Because, like the other guy that was involved with it, he was just excited to have his first project out. No one's really going to fight for you, So it's a really big deal, and it's so
a really big deal. And it's, look, I've been in the business for about 20 years, and rarely do people stand up and really fight for you or even thank you. I remember the director and actor, Peter Berg. Probably if I were to ever write my memoirs of the business, he would be one of the good ones. And we were at the Toronto Film Festival, and I had just done a movie called Very Bad Things. And everybody was trying to buy that movie. We were the hangover before the hangover, and directors and people just loved that film. We screened great. And there were various people that were standing up in this packed theater and saying how the movie came together and what they did. And I'm not one to sit there and brag or stand up in front of people and say a bunch of things. So I was just sitting there. And Peter, who was the director, stood up and he said, "Everybody's making all these speeches, and there's only one person that the credit of this movie goes to. And that's me." And, I had found the script. Nobody wanted it. Everybody thought it offended everybody at the time. And I remember showing up at Peter Berg's trailer. He was an actor on a TV show called Chicago Hope. He didn't know who I was. I was, still fairly new in the game, and, went to his trailer and knocked on the door and said, "I'm going to make your movie." And he was like, "Who are you?" I'm like, "Some person who's going to make your movie." And I did. And we made it. And, but he even wrote me a handwritten letter somewhere. I don't know where that letter is, but I've got to find it one day. And it was amazing. But that's such a rarity.
That's so nice.
You remember those people and you try to emulate them, and hopefully someone will tell a story of what I did for them one day. So
I mean, you would think, right? It's such a nice feeling.
Yep.
Most of the interviews that you see with successful people, it's like you always hear the parts about already the working process, the creative process, and how you get a project from its start to completion. Which is really fantastic. But what a lot of people, including myself, are curious about is how you get your start. Because something like film production, it's not really easy to know how do you get to the point where you get to actually produce your first film. Right. So what was it like for you? What was your journey?
My journey was different than most people. I started as a songwriter. So when I came to this town, I was a songwriter. And I was also a runaway bride, and we'll leave some of that out. But I I knew I wasn't going back to Florida and I needed a job. And songwriting was actually interesting to me. I was making money doing that, but it wasn't something that I thought I was that great at. I kind of fell into that, and my first song became a top 10 single all throughout Europe with an unknown producer at the time named Simon Cowell. So me and Simon, who don't know each other, came up at the same time
No
on
way.
the same album with the same, yeah. So that was kind of interesting. But I knew I wasn't going to go back, and I needed a job, and film was everywhere. And I just kind of said, I want to learn this. And I started as a PA and worked my way up and did everything. And then the company that I was working for at the time, they were actually a bit crooked, and they needed someone to go on a film set and kind of be the eyes and the ears, or the suit, so to speak. But their reasons weren't what you would think. Their reasons were because they were stealing a lot of money from the films. And if they got caught, I would be the one that would have gone down. And so, you know, it was a different time and a different era back then. I didn't know that. I all of a sudden I showed up in Canada on my first movie set. I'd never even been on a set. And I quickly learned what was happening. You know, it's one thing to do that with a very naive young girl, but I had gone to Tulane and Harvard. So I kind of have a brain. And when I figured out what was happening, I called the Bond company, and they said, you realize you're calling the Bond company in your own film. You're either the dumbest girl or smartest girl ever. And I said, I just want to make sure everybody gets their money back. And then the actors all rallied around me and said, oh my God, we have to protect you. Like this is crazy, but at least the movie's going to keep going. And so the actors all rallied around me too. And, you know, I wouldn't have exchanged that for a second. I managed to get the film delivered. We stayed on budget. Nobody got to steal anything. The people I worked for weren't particularly happy, but I left. And by the time I had left, actors around town knew that I was an actor's producer. And so I had a lot of friends at the time that were very significant actors that started calling me to ask if I would produce movies for them or with them, or be at production companies. I had managers, you know, calling me to ask if I wanted to be a manager, none of which I wanted. I ended up realizing that there was value add to what had happened. And I took all the money I had made as a songwriter, and I just kind of put it into a film company. It was not the smartest thing to do, but it was kind of, I tell people it was like playing roulette at 1 a.m. You kind of want to go to bed, but you still have $100. So you put it on red, and if you win, you're going to be jumping up and down and excited. But if you lose, you actually get to go to bed. So it's kind of what I did with an awful lot of money. I just took it all, put it on what I considered red, and said, I'm going to go for it. And at the very least, I could always go back to Florida and get married to the guy that I was the runaway bride from. So there wasn't really a downside. And 5 years later, we had, you know, a Golden Globe People's Choice nomination. We had won the United Nations Award. I sold the company on 4 Oscars. You know, we either bought, financed, or produced 25 movies in 5 years. It was insane. But I started it and it was great. And then I sold it on the Oscars and retired for about 6 years just to rest and regroup. But it was good. It was, you know.
Is that bought, financed, or produced?
Yes.
So your company did those 3 different things.
Yeah. So we would either be the foreign distributor on a film that we saw, or we would finance, which I didn't necessarily have to produce, but I would finance a movie, or we would physically produce them.
Okay. So then, like, when you buy a film, how do you even have the channels when you're first starting out to distribute the film? Or do you partner with the right people who already?
So my company was a foreign distribution / production company. So my partner at the time was a foreign distributor. So we would partner with the likes of HBO or the likes of Sony or whatever, and we would take the foreign rights to it.
So you start as a production assistant, you learn the job, and then you basically start your own company where you're just choosing your own projects. And wow, that is really, really awesome.
But it was a crash course. I don't know if I'd recommend that course to a lot of people, you know, and a lot of people ask me, you know, could you do it again? And it was a different time back then. You know, when I started in the business, there were only 3 independent companies that the banks would approve of, just 3. Now you've got a ton of them. But at the time, there weren't many. So my company became one of the top 4 companies, overnight. And then 2 of them went under. I think Lakeshore is the only one left. I can't even remember. There was ITC, and it was myself, it was Lakeshore, and I can't remember what the other company was. But, also at the time, very different. If a movie was 7 million and under, it was independent. And if a movie was 7 million and up, it was a studio film. So it was very different days. And you knew that if a movie was 3 million and under, you could come out in the video market and probably make money. But, very different days. Nowadays, I think the film business at this moment is the hardest it's ever been. People think it's easier because everybody needs content, but they actually don't. I think the television content has become an all-time high. I know that I love some of the shows that are coming out on Netflix and Amazon and stuff are unbelievable, but it's also hurting features. It used to be that actors would turn their nose at TV. They only wanted feature films. But now I've got to battle Netflix, which will overpay actors. When I'm at Sony and we're coming out theatrical, but nobody knows, will we come out theatrical, especially with COVID? Do we come out theatrical? Do we not? Sony doesn't typically overpay, as most studios don't. So there's a battle going on of, should that A-list actor be in a 10-part miniseries for a streamer, or does he want to take 3 months or 4 months off and go try to make a feature film? So it makes it difficult.
Do you produce TV shows as well?
We are going to, I can't announce on this, but I'm about to do a mini series that is going to take my career in a whole nother trajectory. Yeah, I'm super excited about it. And I'm partnering with a huge producer in the TV space where, yeah, you'll be hearing everything about this. I'm super excited about it. I can talk about it in January.
You don't talk about many things like this, so I know that this is
this is my favorite project I think I'm going to do, and only because legal paperwork are being signed and stuff is the only reason I can't talk about it right now. But yeah,
lunch and we're going to chat about this.
Yeah, it's my favorite thing ever.
Yeah. Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that is awesome.
Yeah.
So taking it back for a second, you said that you started as a songwriter, but you kind of just fell into it. How do you fall into being a songwriter? How do you fall into something?
I think my life is the craziest life ever. I feel that somebody up there, I did something right in a previous life, and I tend to fall into things. And God bless whatever I did before, I'm grateful. So I had gone to school in psychology. I got my degree in psychology. I took that infamous year off to go learn my father's business, which was the hotel business. And somebody came one day and said, could you put lyrics to a song? Oh, wait, I skipped a second. When I took my infamous year off, I got a job with CBS, and the job was starting in a newsroom. So I'm fascinated with news. While everybody's saying turn the news off, I can't. I'm fascinated with news. It gave me my start, and I worked for CBS for a year. And then I ultimately quit over a story that I wouldn't cover. The one thing that was bad about news is it was always something bad. It was always like, somebody got shot, somebody got stabbed, there's a coup attempt. You don't realize how bad the news can get. I remember turning to my producer one day and saying, like, when do you get used to this? And he said, oh, you'll get used to it soon. And I thought, I don't want to get used to this. This is not something that I thought I would sign up for. But there was a very tragic story in the town I grew up in where a little boy was kidnapped in Sears department store. And when they ultimately found him, this is a very horrific story, he had been decapitated, and they never could find who the killer was. But that was the story I was supposed to cover. And I was working in the newsroom at the time, and it turns out that the father of this boy worked for my father's hotel. And the newsroom wanted me to go and show up at the house with the camera crew. I'd knock on the door. If we could get the story, we would just come in and we would be the first, newsroom to get the story. And if we couldn't get it, my camera crew would be in the bushes and we'd film it anyway. So either way, I was getting the story, and I refused. It was something that I wasn't about to do. This family had just lost their child. And so I quit that day. And that father went on to start a very big show called America's Most Wanted. And that was John Walsh, and his son was Adam Walsh. It became a huge story. And so all of a sudden I was sitting at home one day, and because I used to write copy so quickly for the news stories, this girl that I knew that was a disco diva said, could you write lyrics to a song of mine? I'm like, no. And she said, but you write copy so quickly. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not a songwriter. The interesting thing is, if I could ever redo my career, not that I hate, I love the trajectory I did, but I probably should have been in music, not film. I love music. I think music is everything. It changes moods. It makes you happy. It's like, I'm still a rocker chick at heart. I just went to the Rolling Stones. I'll always go to concerts. I mean, music makes me happy. And so when she asked me to write a song, although I thought it was nuts, when I came back to her, she'd given me a cassette tape. That's how long ago it was. And when I came back to her, I was like, here's the verses, here's the bridge, here's the chorus, which she was even surprised. I think she thought I would give her a poem. And it was amazing. And I had done my junior year abroad in London. So I called up a man that I had met in London that worked for BMI Music. And I said, I know you're going to tell me to keep my day job, but somebody needs to hear this song. I just wrote it. No one knows that I did. Will you listen to it? It was just a ballsy thing a little kid would do. And he did. And about 2 weeks later, he called me up and he said, do you have a publishing company? And I said, no. And he said, well, you need to start one. And he said, and by the way, this artist wants a second song. So can you write a second song? And that was it. And again, that artist was an artist named Sunita, who is as big as Whitney Houston was in America. And the producer was Simon Cowell. So it was amazing, but that's how you fall up. I mean, it was just crazy. It was the same thing with the film business. I literally fell up. I mean, I definitely became passionate about what I was doing, but it was never supposed to do what it did. And, it was great.
Are you kind of just open still to falling into things, or are you ready?
Definitely am. Oh no, I'm always, I think in life, I'm still doing movies and getting into TV, but I'm very open to always being a chameleon and changing. I just got into a vodka company, by the way. So I'm a part owner of a vodka company that is coming soon. I'm getting into the tech world right now with something that if I pull off, I think it's going to be gigantic, and it will be something new that hasn't been done before. And yeah, I'm always open to learning and seeing and being the first to do something.
Yeah. I mean, someone who is as big of a risk taker as you are, there must be some huge failures too at some point. Is there any defining failure that you've ever had that has like pushed you in one direction or another, or have you never really experienced that kind of disappointment in anything that you've done?
I think that I've been pretty lucky in as far as business is concerned. I think I had to retire for years. I think my failure became my personal life. And that's a problem that some people have that become very driven like I was. I consider myself pretty smart. So when I get into something, it's something that I know, and I will take the appropriate steps. And I'm also the kind of person that I will succeed. But I think, and it took me a long time to realize that there definitely need to be a balance. I had some wonderful men that were in my life that took a definite second to the company, especially the company that I started, my first film company. They were wonderful. There was no way we could have lasted. I was always on a film set, always at a bank closing, always in an editing room. And there was always a telephone ringing with an actor. And that's quite, it's tough for a man. The new me, even with the new company, is like, there will always be a balance to my life now. My weekends are my weekends, as long as I can, unless we're in production. And there's a time when the phone turns off. Our business is still crazy, as my next movie's in Serbia, and I'm dealing with London right now where we're casting, and the movie after that's going to be Bulgaria. So the times are still a little bit hard to say I'm definitively shutting off, like we'll never be 9 to 5. But I think it's very important especially for females, female to female, to have a balance.
Yeah.
And it's something that I had to learn, just like many men have to learn that are as driven.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Apparently my cat is very into what you're talking about.
I'm watching your cat.
Yeah, she has decided to join us on the couch.
I've been watching her.
So funny. Yeah, she just keeps coming in and out and she's like looking at
Yeah.
you. So do you do the location scouting for your films yourself?
Yeah.
How do you choose where to shoot?
I mean, you're lucky enough to hire really good location scouts, and 9 out of 10 times you got to turn it over to them and your director to say, I'm just there to make sure the director's vision is right. Very rarely, if you hire the appropriate person with the appropriate background, are you going to say no? There are some places I remember, I think it was Very Bad Things when we were shooting. I'm a very intuitive person, and we needed some houses, and you would walk into some houses and the energy was like, hell no, we are just not shooting here. But for the most part, it's okay. And as long as you trust your director and your location scout, unless it's something awful or you can't afford it, you're going to say yes.
A big part of our audience is Armenian, and I'm always looking for ways to make Armenia more attractive for production companies because I really want to bring filming there.
Yeah.
The landscapes in Armenia, the locations are absolutely beautiful. The people in film production in Armenia are so professional and so creative, but I don't really know how to create that bridge. How would I make that country attractive for production?
The big thing that some countries do, and I haven't heard Armenia ever mentioned as far as the tax credits. I mean, we go where the tax credits are now. Like America has become a place that you can barely shoot in anymore. You can go to Atlanta and you can go to, I think, Kentucky to get tax credits. But if I go to Greece, or if I go to Qatar now, or if I go to, South Africa or Serbia, I'm going to get a lot more. So like my movie is supposed to be Chicago, and we're going to be building Chicago in Serbia. So as far as Armenia is concerned, they need to just get a good tax credit in place. And then, once the tax credit's in place, it's showing how you can build or make Armenia look like New York City or wherever. So, it's surprising where we go. When I did my Robert De Niro movie, we were in Barcelona. I was supposed to be in New York. This time I'm going to be in Serbia. I'm supposed to be in Chicago. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Your Robert De Niro movie, I actually never told you the story. I was in Armenia with my husband, and it was called Red Lights, right? So it comes on. You and I had just met maybe a couple of months before that. The movie comes on, and we're watching. We're like, oh, Robert De Niro, cool. We should watch this film. Yeah. And then it goes, Cindy Cowan Entertainment presents. I was like, oh my God, babe, that's my friend. That's your friend. What was that like to work with Robert De Niro? I mean, he's such a legend, and so many people would just dream of working with him.
Yeah, he was great. That was my first movie back after being retired, and that movie was a dream. I absolutely loved my cast. We were actually, Elizabeth Olsen had only been out of the country one other time. So, Elizabeth, she's huge now, Elizabeth Olsen, but at the time she was like my little sister. I remember when her sisters, the Olsen twins, came to visit, and that was like, that was in its own right fascinating and interesting. But Bob was great. He's a very shy man. So it was interesting at the beginning. We would all, Sigourney Weaver and Cillian Murphy and Elizabeth and I, Toby Jones, we were all together. We would go out to dinners and go to, we would try to enjoy Barcelona on the times off. And Robert De Niro was always sitting on the opposite side of the stage by himself. And it's just because he's really shy. And I remember one day I just kind of got up the nerve to walk over and speak to him, which everybody told me not to. He would always stay in character. And there's a lot of actors that stay in character. If they're doing a horror movie, definitely don't get near them. When they're staying in character, they're in it, or a sad movie or whatever. But he would always stay in character. And I did go over one day. He was, again, I think, quite shocked that I just went. I just said, look, we're all in Barcelona for a couple months. We're all going out. How do I get you to come out with us one night? And then he did. And we had an amazing time. And from then on, it became a lot better. And I think, sometimes these big superstars, some of them are really shy, and sometimes people are just afraid to speak to them. In Robert De Niro's case, it was great. he's certainly a perfectionist. And yeah, I got to be in Barcelona with Robert De Niro. It was amazing.
Barcelona on its own is amazing, but then add that amazing project and Robert De Niro, that must have been just so much fun.
In my filmmaking days, he probably did one of the most interesting things ever, which there was a restaurant called El Bulli. It is closed now. It was the most famous restaurant in the world with the most famous chef in the world. And there was a 3-year wait list to get into that restaurant. Literally, you could call, I don't know how people actually ever went there, but you could call and they would say, like in 2025 on Thursday, on October 22nd, you have a reservation at 8 o'clock. I don't know who didn't get in this restaurant, but a lot of people don't realize Robert De Niro owns a lot of restaurants all around the world. And somehow towards the end of our film set, he shut the restaurant down so that we could all go. And it's a fascinating restaurant. It served about a 40-course meal, and it was about a 4-hour, time to eat all these things. And I mean, that was amazing. This restaurant deserved everything it was. And then it shut down shortly after because that chef was retiring. So I just don't know what happened to the people that were waiting 3 years for that day. Right? I mean, somehow they had to make it up to them, but wow, what an experience.
Would you say that's your favorite film that you worked on? Do you have a favorite?
Every movie becomes your baby. But I would think Very Bad Things, was my baby, just because nobody wanted it. That movie was around forever. I was Peter Berg's first time directing, and, it feels good because his career has gone on to become so massive. And I love to say started him. And that movie was a mixture of friends, where Peter Berg and I called various people that we knew and just kind of slapped this movie together. And, Christian Slater, Cameron Diaz, Jon Favreau, Jeremy Piven, Daniel Stern. I mean, the cast was amazing. And we definitely had our challenges, but it was the most fun. And by the way, one of the only times I got to shoot in America. So, and the only time I got to shoot, we shot in LA and Las Vegas, and that was a dream come true to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say are the most important talents of being a good film producer?
It depends. I love that I have a psychology background because you're going to need it. There are so many different fractions that a producer has to deal with. Like, a lot of producers think they're only dealing with talent. Well, no, I'm dealing with an art department and set designers and grips and gaffers and whatever. So you have to have a bit of a persona that is able to deal with fires. There's always going to be a fire in a film set. I have never seen a film go easy. They just don't. You got 150 people minimum on a set, and a lot of different personalities. So you're going to have a lot of fires to deal with. And also be organized and mindful and have the ability to say no. One of the things that producers don't realize is you're going to be everybody's hero when the film is greenlit. You found the money, you found the project, it's yours, this is amazing. But as soon as that camera starts rolling, you're everybody's enemy. And that's a hard thing for people to realize, because now it's the director's movie. And although you're there to make sure the director's vision is made, you're also going to have to say no to a lot of people. The sun's going down, we can't shoot anymore. No, we need to shoot a couple more scenes. No, but the sun's going down, it doesn't matter. We need a couple more scenes. Or we have to turn around and be back at 4 a.m. Well, we don't want to, we want to sleep till 6. Well, we can't. You have to be back at 4. Or you have to say to the director, I can't give you any more shots. You're done. Like, we're running out of money. So this is the last shot. As the director says, no, I need about 2 more takes. So you kind of don't become everybody's friend then you've got to have this diplomatic way of saying no a lot. And the sad thing about the film business is when a film comes out amazing, that director is going to be up there at the Oscars and accepting his award, and those actors are going to be up there and accepting the award. And yes, for best picture or whatever, there's a bunch of producers that will run up there, but most people don't know what a producer does. So like when you just asked, the average person has no idea what we do, none. And so the only time you hear about producers are if something goes really wrong, or if the film comes out awful. Then usually it's a bunch of agents and whatever, saying, well, he had a really bad producer. Well, no, maybe he was just a really bad director, but you know, they're not going to get blamed for it. Usually the producer is going to get blamed for it.
It's actually really, really unfair because a producer, I would say, is probably the largest part of the project.
Yeah.
Usually you come in with an idea, you're there from beginning to end, and you're executing the project, and you're bringing in all the different pieces. You're bringing in the actors, you're bringing in the director, you're overseeing everything, including editing. And then it's interesting because the people who become more powerful a lot of times are, like you said, the director, or even the people who become recognizable on camera, just people whose faces that we know. How do you face that challenge? Because for me, that was challenging when I didn't want to be in front of the camera. And it was really annoying when you see that, like, if someone is just executing everything that you put together, sometimes like they get more say in a project than you do. And that's
100% they do. 100%. I remember when I started in the business, everybody wanted me in front of the camera, and it was weird. I don't know why, but at the time I was so insulted. I was like, and some of the biggest casting directors, like humongous, would be like, you're on the wrong side, get on this side, or we'll just put you in this movie, or I'll put you in that. And I was like, no, I'm a producer. By the way, most idiotic thing I've ever said, because at the end of the day, you're right. Not that I would want to necessarily be talent, but the talent has so much more say so. They're getting 10 times the amount of money I am for being on it a third of the time that I'm on it. It might take me, well, it does. It usually takes an average of 2 years minimum to get a film from start to finish. And that's 2 years of my life, where I might hire an actor for 4 weeks. If that film comes out bad, they just don't put it on their resume. It's on my resume forever. And, you know, and out of the 2 years, you know, I'm on it for a minimum of a year. So, you know, you just have to be egoless. I'm fine to be in front, and I'm fine to be behind, but that's how I am in my relationships too. You know, I think that's the Southern girl in me. If I'm with an amazing man, I want him to shine, and I'll be the girl behind the guy. And people are like, why? And I'm like, just Southern in me. And the same thing with my directors and my talent. I'm okay with it, but I'm also okay to be like this. And I don't know, it's worked for me in an interesting way that I didn't expect. I think because there's an accessibility to me, because I'm so chameleon-like. So like, I never expected my Instagram to become as big as it is. You know, I am flattered and speechless that, you know, there's like 116,000 people that follow me, and they make me the most amazing gifts, and they're constantly writing to me and saying things, and they consider me very inspirational. And I, for a while, was like, I couldn't really understand why I affected them to the way that I did. But then I'm always positive, even when I showed the bad. And I will show the bad. Some people are like, my life is perfect, it's never bad. I'm like, no, my life gets bad, you know. And by the way, when it gets bad, I'm going to show you, and we're going to laugh about it together, or we're going to figure it out together. But I think one of the other things that I do is I answer everybody, and it takes me forever. And it's why I don't know how these Instagrammers post every day. They must have teams of people that answer them. I don't. That's me. And I think people are shocked. They're like, wait, that really is you. And I'm like, no, that's me. But because of that, I couldn't post every day. I can post like once a month, maybe, because, you know, there's thousands of people that are writing me, and I will always write them back. And I remember somebody said, why? You shouldn't have that many, you shouldn't follow that many people, and you shouldn't answer everybody. And my response is, I follow everybody that I know. So, and I always will. If I know you and you're following me, of course I'm going to follow you back. I don't care about some algorithm. And if you are kind enough to take time out to write to me, I can always answer you. It might take me a week or two, but I will absolutely always answer you. And because of that, you know, there's an accessibility there, and I help everybody I can. My thing in the way I live my life is that, you know, I'm hoping that I'm leaving a footprint, and, you know, I'll know my life is successful when it's the end of my days, and there are people that can repeat a story like I did about Peter Berg, that I changed their life in some way. And that's the best thing we can do, especially in this crazy world right now, where things are going nuts and people are getting more and more angry and more, you know, defensive. And let's just try to change at least one person's life every single day.
Yeah, absolutely.
If
But
more people would do that and spread that message, we would be a much better place.
absolutely, absolutely. That's the interesting thing about social media too, though, that it has allowed for everyone who actually is like really just interesting to have that kind of visibility. Like it has really made you famous as a producer, but in your own way, where you didn't have to play a role that you didn't want to play. Like for me, it was really frustrating to have to do some of the like really perky hosting gigs and stuff that was not really in my character, to like talk about, I don't know, like Paris Hilton's car break-in or whatever, like stuff that didn't interest me.
Yeah.
So I think social media has kind of given such a wider range for us to be able to be visible, but in the way that we want to be, and not really compromising our true selves and not having to really take gigs that we don't want to take anymore.
But as long as people don't compromise their true selves. And again, I remember a long time ago, I had a very bad breakup and it went all over social media, not because I put it there, because we were in the limelight. And that's the bad thing about being in the limelight. All of a sudden, you got to take the bad and the good. People are now going to be writing about it. And it was a really bad breakup. But I stayed quiet for as long as I could. And then I made one statement, and then people went along with me. I remember I had written one line, my heart is broken. I didn't see this coming either. And I had some females call me up and say, don't ever make yourself look vulnerable. And I was like, why not? And they said, because now you look weak. And I said, but this is me. This is what I'm going through right now. And Variety actually put me in the top 25 most powerful women that year. And I remember thinking, why did they put me in this? But I was being talked about all over town. And my speech was that we need to show the bad and the good. The one thing I don't like about Instagram or Facebook or these things is that people are so busy showing this perfect life. And there are kids committing suicide because of it, because they're thinking, why isn't my life perfect like that person's? But that person's life's not perfect either. So the day that I said, my heart is broken and I'm this powerful, supposed successful woman, is the day I became accessible to everybody else. All of a sudden, we're all the same. We all, that's why I don't understand the hatred in the world right now, be it religion or race or colors or genders or everything that everybody's so upset about. We are all human. We're all the same. And if we treat everybody like equals, what an amazing world we would live in. I just don't understand what's happening.
What's happening spills into the film industry as well. And now there are all of these regulations and restrictions. I talked to Arthur Sarkisian about it as well, that now there are all these rules that if you do this, then, this is the consequence. If you don't include that, then you can't be nominated for an Oscar anymore. And like, there are all of these things that he felt is really an infringement on the creative process.
Yes.
How do you feel about it?
I mean, look, I'm down the middle and very mixed. It is definitely infringing on the creative process. And it's a shame because the rules and regulations that you're referring to, like the Oscars, cannot have an all-white cast in a movie in order to be eligible for the Oscars. And I go back to one of my favorite movies ever was Schindler's List. Well, you can't make Schindler's List then, or it wouldn't be able to be an Oscar nominated film, but it was a real film. So how do you then, you don't make it? So I'm disheartened for that. On the flip side, I see the other side that says, well, we didn't get the opportunity to be in a lot of films back then. So now it's becoming even. And I agree with that. And I think that there needed to be changes that were made to allow for more diversity, but I don't think it should be as restrictive as it is. I don't think everything can be a cookie cutter. You cannot have, let's have X amount of this, and this before this movie's made, because it's going to stop a lot of movies like Life is Beautiful and Schindler's List and Roots, for that matter, true stories, no matter what race or ethnicity it was, from being made or ever being nominated.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works.
Yeah. How important do you feel networking is for this industry?
Extremely. Extremely. One of the things that makes me a valuable producer is that I am a networker. But I don't even realize that I'm networking when I'm networking. I just, again, I think it goes back to my psychology and my curiosity of people. Like I went to go meet a girlfriend the other night at this event that I didn't want to go to. I literally stayed about a half hour, but I met a woman there that had a title that I'd never heard before. She's a futurist. She actually lectures brands on predicting the future and the future trends. So a lot of it goes into technology, and like Mark Zuckerberg definitely got a futurist to say, you're no longer Facebook. Everything that's coming is the metaverse. So now you'll be Meta. And that's the job of a futurist. I found her so fascinating that I got into this long conversation with her, and she probably is now going to be part of a business that I'm starting. But the average person wouldn't have even thought that. I like to hear kernels of things, especially things I don't know, and then really explore them. And I'm always trying to be a step ahead of everybody. I don't like to be a step behind. I want to be a step ahead.
So for someone now wanting to break into the film industry and not knowing what steps to take, what would you advise? How should they get started?
So it depends on what area of the film business you want to be. If you want to be a writer, I say shadow as many writers as you can. Get whatever job you can. Remember, I started as a PA. So the best thing a writer can do is get behind a big writer. And I don't care if you're doing notes, I don't care if you're doing coverage, I don't care what you're doing, but become an intern, become whatever it is to get where the producers are or where writers are, so you can learn what is working, what's working in the marketplace, and how to legitimately write. And that's going to be by reading a bunch of other things. If you want to be an actor, get yourself on tape. A lot of people come to town and they think, I'm pretty, I'm going to be an actress, or I'm handsome, I'm going to be an actor. And that's not the case. As a matter of fact, one of the things I tell everybody is, great, you can play one role, you should be an impersonator. But now let me see you do something else. Let me see you get dirty. Let me see you not look pretty. Let me see you, do different accents or whatever. And the best thing I tell actors all the time is, again, get yourself on tape a lot. And if you don't know how to do that, there are these free magazines that list breakdowns of like college projects, even high school projects and graduate projects. And you can literally go in and try out and get a lot of tape from those things. And then find yourself an agent, find yourself a manager, and do whatever it takes to just hone your craft, be in plays, be in whatever. So that's the actor of it all. And again, network, just like you said, if you hear that things are out there, go. But you can't just show up at a party and grab a drink and sit in the corner. And, again, network to what it is that you want to learn. And as far as a producer, just learn every aspect of it. Again, I started at the bottom, and when I was a PA, I got to know all the grips. I got to know all the gaffers. I knew all the DPs. I'm behind the camera. I want to say, what is that? When we location scouting, I'm like, just like you, like, how'd you find this location? I mean, I think the biggest thing for a producer is to be curious. And that's, again, probably what makes me a good producer. I'm curious enough to care about all my different departments. Again, producing is not about casting a movie. And that's what a lot of people think. They're like, oh, I'm a producer. I cast a movie, or I wrote a check for $1 million. I'm a producer. No, you're not. So just know enough. And God bless, if you are the person that writes a check for $1 million, get with people that know how you're going to get your money back. Because that's the other thing that's in this business that I would warn people about. Someone might say, I wanted to get my feet wet, so I just did a little movie for $1 million. And that person put $1 million into that movie. Well, they're probably going to lose it. Where I would have said to them, had they come to someone like me, I'm like, great, let's take your $1 million movie. And maybe could you come up with like 350,000 of it? And then let's get some pre-sales, and let's see if we can get a distributor, and let's see if we can get the numbers. So before any of your money goes in, we already know how your money's going out. And a lot of times that $1 million could have been used in a $10 million movie where you would have been the only equity, but because you didn't know better, you thought, I'm going to get my feet wet in a little movie, but that same dollar amount could have gone into a bigger film. So again, it's being curious enough to know and ask the right questions to honestly make sure you're getting your money back.
How did you learn all of this? Is it just through your experience going from film to film? Because this is so much knowledge that you
No, it's a lot. Again, I was always curious. I just asked a lot of people, learned from the crooks that started me in the business, and then, just kind of had enough knowledge to or foresight to stay quiet when people were talking and to pick up what they were talking about and then to try to learn it myself. But again, the business is constantly changing. So, and some of these young kids that are coming up are going to be much better producers than I'm ever going to have been, because these kids are making movies on smartphones and they're editing, on their computers in ways that, I didn't get those opportunities when I was coming up. I'm still old fashioned, the kids that are coming up will be much better producers than my generation, and there'll be another generation that'll be better than them. But I also acknowledge that I know I can learn from the kids. I don't look for like a kid like, oh wait, you haven't been there. I've got all this experience. I look at them like, you're the future and I need to hang on to you.
Do you think this pandemic has changed the film industry forever?
Yes. And like I said originally, I'm not sure yet if it's for the better or for the worse. I think it's different, but I think our lives are different, and I can't tell you if it's for the better or for the worse. So, I don't know. One of the things that's making me curious during this pandemic, and I don't have an answer for it, and I think this is the therapist in me, is you'd think that we're so depressed right now because we've been locked in our homes and we're scared. Nobody knows what tomorrow's going to bring. Are we going to run out of food? Is the pandemic going to end? Do our families get to ever go back to normal? Do we ever get to, experience the freedoms that we did? I can't for the life of me figure out why people still want to be scared in what they're watching. And the #1 TV show, Squid Games, on Netflix, that was the scariest thing I've ever seen on so many different psychological levels. And, you're going to see one horror movie after another coming out. And it's what people want right now, where you would think, like when In the Heights came out, the musical, and I can't wait to see West Side Story, you'd think people would want to be transformed into an uplifting world right now, any kind of fantastical thing that can make you disappear and just be happy for 2 hours. And the marketing is showing the opposite. And I can't figure that out.
As someone who studied psychology, that's an interesting thing to try to figure out, because
right, it's crazy to me. It's absolutely crazy. I don't really understand it.
Maybe we became addicted to this cycle of victimhood and depression. Maybe that's what it says about our society.
And maybe, but I hope we get out of that. I hope we go back to just wanting to laugh and escape.
Yeah.
I don't think, I hope that we don't keep amplifying the issues that we've got. I would like to be taken away from them for a bit and hope that one day, that the pandemic changes this world for the better, not for the worse. I can only hope.
Yeah, same. Cindy, thank you so much. It's always so interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope we didn't confuse everybody. We covered a lot.
No, I learned so much from you, so I know that everyone else did too. And we've been friends for so many years, but we never really got so in depth about the industry, because we usually talk about cool stuff. We don't really talk about work when we're hanging out together. So this was actually very, very interesting for me too. I learned so much, and I hope we get to do this again.
I'm so glad this worked out. This was, last minute. I'm so glad it worked out. And you're an amazing interviewer. So yeah, this was a lot of fun.
Well, I look forward to seeing you and catching up in person soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.